Hi there, and welcome to an extra Insomnia Insight episode. We were going to have talking insomnia because it's Thursday, but I asked someone and they actually didn't reply yet. And I had another potential guest, but they couldn't make it. So I thought I could use today, Thursday, as an opportunity to answer an email that I promised to answer, and it is from Erin. She used to be my client in BedTyme, I think like 2 years ago or something like that, and she wrote me an email the other day that I'll share with you, where she said that my daughter, I'm recognizing the same type of behaviors and thought patterns and things like that in my own daughter who's 9 years old. Do you have any advice or tips on this? And the thing is that myself and my wife, we've been working on an app that's going to be called Wabi Sabi for Kids, and I'm writing a book about this. And at some point, we're going to have content for parents as well. But we haven't done that yet. So I thought I could use this as an opportunity to start talking about this. And there will be content here for anyone, I think, even if you're an adult that has insomnia, trouble sleeping. I think there'll be things you can learn here. But particularly if you have a child that has trouble sleeping, or if you know anybody that has that, you can tip them about this video. So yeah, without further ado, what we're going to do today is actually the following. I'm going to go over some like basic sleep physiology, and then we're going to talk about why insomnia can happen in a child and when it is and isn't insomnia. And we're going to be talking about the meaning of certain behaviors, like Erin's daughter. She's doing these things like crawling and like really trying to get Erin's attention at night, and how to meet the situation that Erin is facing. So yeah, first of all, let's go over some real basic NATO stuff, gas and brake. So the gas and brake model is there really to explain how sleep happens, and also why we can have trouble sleeping. And it goes as follows. So there's really just two components of this very simple model. Think about a car, okay? A car that has two pedals, a gas pedal and a brake pedal, right? The gas pedal makes it go forward, and brake pedal makes it stop. Very easy, right? It's actually the same when it comes to our sleep system. There's really two things that matter. One is the gas, which is sleep drive, which is basically how much our body wants to sleep at any given point. And then we have the brake, which is hyperarousal that can keep sleep from happening. And what's good to know about the gas pedal, the sleep drive, is that it increases sleep drive, increases all by itself. It's just like we become hungry without doing anything special. Just by not eating, our body naturally produces more hunger, right? Same thing with sleep drive, or the gas, that the longer we're awake, the more gas we have, and the more sleep drive we have, and the more likely for sleep to happen. That's the gas. And by the way, the only thing that can increase the gas is wakefulness. So in a yin yang sort of thing, the only thing that can make us sleep is staying awake. And when the sleep drive dissipates, when we sleep, we become awake when the sleep drive dissipates. So it's kind of yin yang. Sleep produces wakefulness, and wakefulness produces sleep. Now that's the gas. So on the brake side, the brake in our sleep system is hyperarousal, which, by the way, going back to eating, same thing in the eating system. If we are really hungry, but somebody serves us like some leftovers that look terrible, like half rotten or something, we're going to be like, oh, our hunger is going to go away because we're hyper aroused. It's kind of a little bit of a disgust response from us. Oh, that's the brake in our eating system, making sure we don't eat anything that's unsafe for us. And and the same brake works in the sleep system as well. For example, if you're about to fall asleep and you remember, oh, I left my oven on, then that thought immediately makes you awake. And that's for safety reasons. We don't want to think like, oh, I left the oven on, oh, that's fine. That's dangerous, right? So we have a brake in our sleep system, which is hyperarousal, keeps us awake. And that hyperarousal can come from excitement, before Christmas, or a kid before their birthday, or somebody's getting married, or they're really worried, anxious, stressed, curious. Any of those emotions that can kind of lift us up into hyperarousal. That's the brake in our sleep system. And with insomnia, that happens really because the brake is triggered for a perceived threat, the idea that we shouldn't be awake, that it's dangerous to be awake, that can wake us up. That's insomnia. But anyway, this is gas and brake, okay? So this is basic gas and brake physiology, and we're going to see towards the end here why it matters to understand gas and brake, because particularly in a younger child, you can actually do things on the gas side much more than when you're an adult. And the adult is almost all about, or I always say insomnia is a break problem in adults, and it is. Like it's all about like inner work. But that's a little different in a child. So both gas and break matter more, I would say, than they do in an adult, which is almost all break, right? Okay, so now that we talked about that, we're gonna see like, okay, why can this break be triggered in a kid? Uh, and before we do that, I just want to say this that um, a child that is like, I would say less than something like, you know, less than maybe 9, maybe 7, something like that, pretty much cannot have what we have in what we call insomnia, because it's really kids that are towards more like 12, 13, 14 and up that can have this idea that I shouldn't be awake. There's something wrong with that. I should be sleeping now, right now, which is insomnia, right? The fear of being awake itself. So I really think what we call here insomnia, it really doesn't actually happen. No, it's it can happen maybe in somebody 9 at that age, but mostly it's more like teenage and up. So, for example, a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, definitely they don't have insomnia. That cannot happen. They don't have that complex thought pattern. But there are other reasons the break can be triggered. There are other reasons for hyperarousal, which we can talk about here. And oftentimes, by the way, when you have really small kids, it's all break. It's just like a kid has like sleeps a lot during the day, and then the parent goes like, "Why aren't they sleeping at night?" Oftentimes, it's just a break thing. So anyway, it's just a gas thing. It's just that they slept a lot during the day and then don't sleep much at night. Okay, so why can the break be kind of active in a kid, which you'll see it sounds as if there's some break action going on when we read Erin's story. Well, here's the thing, like as parents, we are a source for all the safety in a child's life, really, right? We provide food, we provide shelter, we provide, community for our children. So we are their source of safety. And we'll see when we read this message from Erin that when we take away that sense of safety in the evening from a child, it's quite natural that they will be scared and that break will be triggered, right? So we can have break going on that keeps the child from sleeping in that scenario. And see, we will also see in the message from Erin here that her daughter is doing a lot of things that are sort of younger child behaviors, like crawling and walking on all fours and things like to get Erin's attention. And what does that mean? Like, why are kids doing that? Well, it's really a bid for safety. They want to feel safe. They want you to be there. They want your attention to feel safe. And that's to me that's the meaning of these behaviors. And then finally, we're going to talk about like how to meet a situation like the one Erin is in. So without further, like now we talked about a lot about Erin's situation. Let's read the message from Erin with some commentary, and then we're going to talk about how to meet this. And by the way, I can relate very much to what Erin's going through. I have a daughter who's almost 9. A lot of similarities that I will share a little bit more about that in a second. So, yeah, with that said, let's see what's going on with Erin and her daughter. And by the way, anybody who wants to check us out on Instagram, that's the only social media account we have so far. It's Wabi Sabi. You can find us there. All right, let's read it. The sleep issues I have with my daughter. Oh my gosh, where do I begin? She's 9 years old, and up until this year, I have sung her to sleep. She always had a little trouble going to sleep, so I would massage her back and sing her to sleep. Often that would take 30 minutes or more. And just a quick little thing here, she always had a little trouble going to sleep. When I read that, that signals to me that, children, just like our adults, we all have a little bit of a different temperament. Some kids and adults are very like easygoing, like what we call carefree, like happy-go-lucky. And that child who has that sort of temperament probably fall asleep very easily, right? You can have a child with a different temperament who's a little bit more type A, a little bit more anxious, worry, like a little bit like that. That child will naturally maybe have a little bit, fall asleep a little bit, takes a little longer for them to fall asleep, a little bit lighter sleep, etc. So she always had a little trouble going to sleep. To me, that just describes the child with a certain type of temperament, which is completely normal. All humans have different temperaments, but there was really no struggle with sleep. Erin says, I would just massage her back and sing her to sleep. That was very, very typical. Nothing strange going on there. Often it would take 30 minutes or more. I think that's very, very typical. Her pediatrician recently told us that this has to stop, and I agree. So she gets 5 songs sung to her to help relax, and then I leave. The problem is that she believes going to sleep is incredibly hard, and she hates it so much that she cries that she hates her life because she has to go to sleep many nights. She often stalls with behaviors that are more typical for younger children, like crawling around on the floor, making animal noises, trying to play high energy games, and trying to keep me engaged in conversation about something else. So when I read this, it presented a story where there was an idea that she's 9 years old now. A 9-year-old child should fall asleep by herself, and we got to stop doing this right now. Very common, very natural, and again, nothing here is medical advice. I'm just kind of sharing my general thoughts here. And the thing is that there are many 9-year-olds who fall asleep all by themselves. And I think there are many 9-year-olds who don't as well. And whether a child is ready to, fall asleep by themselves, that's a little bit of a judgment call, which we'll talk about that more later. But it sounds as if what happened here was that the idea was brought up that no, she's too old for this. Let's stop this. And then what happens is then the child, who derives so much safety from feeling safe and now feels unsafe. Now that child is really scared. And now that child will try anything she can to feel safe again. And the reason that happens, around nighttime, I think is really that we are all hardwired to some degree to think of the night as scary. We are a diurnal species, we humans. We have relatively small eyes, unlike predators like panthers and things like that, who have big eyes and they're designed for being awake at night. So we humans, like many other species who are diurnal, in the evening we look for a safe place, and then when we feel safe, our brains allow us to sleep and remain motionless for quite some time, because that's kind of safest for us to not move around. But my point here is that we are hardwired to have a little bit of fear of the dark. And for a child to be left when it is dark, that can be quite scary. And when something changes, like when, okay, I used to have my parent here like indefinitely until I fell asleep, and that changes to like, oh, now they're going to leave. They're going to leave after 5 songs. And there's like maybe this countdown, like that was 1 song. Now it's 2, 3. Oh no, this is going to happen. We can see how that leads to a lot of fear and behaviors to get your parent back, get their attention back, feel safe again, so that sleep can happen. So yeah, just want to contextualize that, and we can continue reading. Bedtime is supposed to be 9 p.m., but the game doesn't usually end until 10:30. If I try to leave her room when she's goofing around, she just follows me around the house begging me to come back. And we talked about why that happens. The long and short of it is that while she's generally falling asleep within 30 minutes of me leaving her room, her perception is that it is an unbearable length of time. Also, she believes she can't go to sleep without me singing to her, and she panics when I say I'm leaving. These 2 things struck a note with me because they touch on some of the principles you talk about in insomnia with adults. I have told her that the length of time she takes to go to sleep is normal and everyone goes through it, but it isn't helping. Do you have any ideas or insights? I definitely have many things I want to share, and I already have shared. I hope that what we talked about so far is helpful. But on the note of like, I try to tell her that it's normal to that it takes 30 minutes to fall asleep. That again is like to someone who thinks that there's something wrong with me. It takes me too long to sleep. Maybe an older child, just knowing that this is normal can be helpful. Maybe a younger child, it's sort of like just words. Like what they want is just to feel safe, and what makes them feel safe is somebody near them. So it's not entirely surprising that doesn't change anything. And so the question becomes, okay, so what's going on, and how should we meet this situation? So I think it's helpful to go back to the gas and brake model and think about, okay, is there a gas thing that's keeping this happening, or is there a brake thing keeping this happening? And gas, when there's a gas thing, gas issue, it's quite straightforward. It's like a child is like just not sleepy, but there's no frustration, anxiety around that. They're just not sleepy. They want to play. but in this message from Erin, we hear more like, this sounds like her daughter wants to play with her, not because she enjoys playing, but she's afraid of being alone. So it doesn't sound like there's a gas issue here, but even though there isn't, you can still change things in a way that can be helpful. So how can we meet a situation like this? Well, we can look at the gas perspective, which we did. And even though it doesn't sound like this is a gas problem, you can still change things. Meaning, if for example, Erin's daughter usually is up by 7, let's say, so she falls asleep maybe 10:30, 11, and wakes up at 7, let's say, then we can do the math there and say that, okay, that's about 8.5 hours, which means that if we simply woke her up an hour earlier, she would probably fall asleep around an hour earlier as well, not immediately, but over time. So one thing that, always can help is just waking your child up earlier if you want them to fall asleep earlier, right? If you want to. But you may also think, you know what, I don't think this has to do with gas at all, sleep drive at all. It's more of a break issue, which we're going to look at next. But sometimes just if we really want our kids to wake up earlier, fall asleep earlier, it's fairly practical to wake them up earlier too, which, maybe not easy to entertain a kid in the morning either, but just something to mention. That's the gas side of things. And how about the break perspective? Well, here's the thing. Here's kind of what it boils down to. All humans, we fall asleep easily when we feel safe, right? And that's why on this channel, we emphasize education so very much, because an adult who has insomnia, they don't feel safe. They think something is wrong. They think they shouldn't be awake this much and things like that. And when that goes away, when we see like, oh, there's nothing going on, there's really nothing to fear, then we feel safe and we can fall asleep. Now, the question here becomes, is a child ready enough, like from a developmental standpoint, is a child ready to understand that it's safe to fall asleep even without my parent around? Or are they not yet developmentally ready to see that, understand that, right? Because the thing is, yes, it is true that when we humans are afraid of something, let's say we're afraid of balloons, and we start avoiding balloons, then we just teach the brain that we should be afraid of them, and it kind of maintains that fear. So it's true that avoiding what we're afraid of maintains the idea there's something to be afraid of. For example, a child who's afraid of falling asleep alone without their parent, that idea is in a way maintained by the parent just staying there and being around them, right? But the question is your child, is my child, is your child, is any child developmentally ready to face their fear? Can they understand on a cognitive level that there is nothing to fear? And does that translate emotionally to feeling safe, right? That is really the question. And if we ask ourselves that question and we answer yes, I think my child is old enough, we can just really educate them, tell them there's nothing to be afraid of. You can sleep by yourself at this point. It's fine. And if they are ready, then that will happen. How, will it happen like the first night, the second night, the third night they sleep by themselves? I don't know, but I think it'll happen fairly easily if they are ready, or fairly soon after we make that change, if they're ready. And so if the answer is yes, then I think that it just becomes a matter of like letting a little bit more time pass, and they'll fall asleep by themselves, see there was nothing to be afraid of, and that will be it, right? But how about if the answer is no? If the answer is no, and we see that, I don't think my child is really, really there yet from a developmental stage, then what I think really helps is befriending wakefulness by proxy. Meaning, what is tough for us adults, as parents, I should say, is that in the evening, we would like to have some time for ourselves. Maybe spend some time with our partners, or just do something alone, right? And singing 5 songs, for example, can feel like a chore. And it is, what we're struggling with is not our own wakefulness, but it's the fact that our child is awake. So we're struggling with, like, our child's wakefulness becomes what we don't want to experience in a way. So what we can do here is what I call befriending wakefulness by proxy, which works for actually both the child and the adult. Meaning, when a child sees that, oh, my parent wants me to sleep, my parent is annoyed when I'm not sleeping, they're trying to make me sleep, my parent is frustrated when I'm not asleep, that makes them have even more the sense of like insecurity, and they're not safe, maybe even with their parent there, because they sense that my parent is upset for some reason. So that makes them feel unsafe, right? And that keeps the struggle going. So by befriending wakefulness by proxy, meaning that when we parents become more okay with the fact that our kid is still awake and our kid still needs us here, then it makes things easier for us because we're not engaged in a struggle. And it makes things easier for the child too, because they see that, oh, my parent isn't annoyed or frustrated, and things get easier for everyone when we befriend wakefulness by proxy in this way. And in a practical sense, what I mean by this, well, I shared before that my own daughter, who's 8.5 or so, very, very similar. She has more of that temperament of like a little bit careful, and at night she starts thinking a lot, and we typically go to bed around 9, but she rarely falls asleep before 10. Sometimes she typically falls asleep, I'd say, around 10:30. So it's sort of similar. Right? It's like from bedtime until she falls asleep, it's about an hour and a half, right? And so um, uh, and I think that she's not quite ready to sleep on her own. So I'm sort of like in the no stage here, where I think ultimately, yes, it's when we face our fears that we see there's nothing to fear, but we don't expect that from a 4-year-old, and we do expect it from a 16-year-old, but an 8 or 9-year-old is sort of in between, right? So I'm sort of in the befriending with by proxy, and what I do is I play chess. Okay, so at 9 o'clock, we read a book. Now we're doing Roald Dahl. Like we read a couple of their books for both. I read for both my kids, or my wife reads for both our kids. And then what I do is when I'm like, okay, I'm done reading now, and then it's maybe 9:30 or something like that, I grab my phone and I like to play chess online. It's kind of relaxing for me, and I enjoy that time. And the thing is that oftentimes a child doesn't need like high engagement from us. They just need a parent present, like physically present there for them to feel safe. And oftentimes I play chess for an hour, but I sort of enjoy that time, and my daughter reads a book or does some drawing or something like that, and she eventually falls asleep. And then the struggle wasn't there because I was okay with her being awake, and she didn't feel pressured being awake. And so I think that can really help befriending wakefulness by proxy. And then also yeah, the same idea here, that thinking of something you both can enjoy. Maybe singing was nice at some point, and maybe if you don't feel pressured, if it doesn't become an effort, if you don't feel like I have to sing for her to fall asleep, but rather I like singing to my daughter, and that's a nice thing we do in the evening, but I don't expect her to fall asleep right after that, or so. Then it can become very nice. Or maybe there's some other things you can do together that makes you look forward to some time in the evening. And I think when I used to work as a sleep doctor, I used to see kids as well, and you know, a lot of the times parents would be like, "Okay, but I get this, but I want some time. I want some time for myself, and maybe to spend with my partner." And the thing is that I do think that when we do this kind of like befriending wakefulness by proxy, we actually do end up having more time, because when we engage in the struggle and we were trying to make our child sleep or make them sleep alone when they're not ready, then they actually stay awake longer and we feel more frustrated, etc. So when they're not ready and going this more kind of befriending wakefulness by proxy, like acceptance route, it allows them to fall asleep easier, and then we do maybe not have as much time as we want in the evening, but we will have some time to do what we would like as well, which helps so much. So I will conclude there, Erin. I hope it made sense to you and everyone else, and look forward to have everyone back again for a roundup tomorrow, which is going to be actually our last roundup for a little bit. There's going to be a 3-week break in our regular programming, because I'm going to be heading over to Sweden to meet my parents and spend some vacation there. But more on that tomorrow in our roundup. And this was it for today. Hope it brought a lot of value, and look forward to having you back soon. Bye for now.